The Zarian fleet loomed above Earth, an armada so vast and powerful that it seemed to devour the stars around it. Commander Zaller stood in the observation deck of the flagship, his sharp, reptilian eyes scanning the swirling expanse of space. The cold, unyielding blackness of the void stretched endlessly before him, a canvas for the looming spectacle of 2,000 warships, each gleaming with lethal potential. Magnificent, isn't it? Admiral Zelrich's deep voice rumbled behind him. Zaller didn't turn. His gaze remained fixed on Earth, now a speck in the distance, vulnerable and unaware of the impending doom. The Zarian Empire had been observing Earth for decades. Their spies infiltrated, their scouts watched, and their intelligence gathering was unmatched. And now, their fleet had arrived. The moment of conquest was at hand. 2,000 ships, Zelrich continued, stepping closer to Zaller. Each one capable of turning a moon to dust. Earth's defenses will be no match for us. Zaller's lips curled into a predatory grin. Humans. They still use chemical propulsion to reach their own moon. They believe splitting atoms is their greatest achievement. He chuckled, the sound low and throaty. This will be over before they even realize what's happening. He could feel the weight of his own superiority. The Zarian Empire had conquered hundreds of planets, crushed entire civilizations underfoot. Yet, despite the undeniable power of his fleet, Zaller couldn't shake a faint, uneasy feeling. The humans were different. They didn't belong on the list of easily conquered species. Have you seen their so-called space station? Zaller's voice was laced with contempt as he spoke. It's held together with metal fasteners and rotates to simulate gravity. How quaint. He snorted. We mastered artificial gravity before we left our home system. Behind him, Captain Zara walked onto the deck, data pad in hand, her pace steady and confident. She stood tall, her own pride radiating from her posture, but even she couldn't mask the tension in the air. Commander, she said, we've completed the latest scans. Their technology, it's exactly as we expected. Primitive. Their most advanced vessels are little more than metal hulks held together by crude technology. Their weapons are nothing more than projectiles fired through chemical reactions. There is nothing to fear. Zaller's gaze flicked to the screen behind Zara. Earth, with its swirling oceans and wisps of cloud, was beautiful in its innocence. Too beautiful. His tail flicked nervously, a rare sign of hesitation. He had been hunting for years, but something about this hunt felt different. Their technology is 4 centuries behind ours, Commander, Captain Zara continued. This will be a slaughter. She sounded almost too eager, her eyes scanning the data as though the humans were already defeated. Zaller nodded slowly, but the unease gnawed at him. You're too generous, he said, his voice dropping to a lower register. I'd say 6, maybe 7 centuries. They haven't even developed basic energy shields. No fleet. No weapons that could even dent our hulls. Zara's fingers moved across her data pad, finalizing the scans. No defense platforms in orbit. Not a single ship capable of intercepting us. It's almost too easy. Perfect, Zaller muttered under his breath, though his mind remained focused on the tiny planet below. We will bring the full weight of the Zarian Empire to bear. Earth will bend, and their species will kneel. Just as Zaller turned back to the observation deck, Dr. Chaos, the fleet's chief scientist, stepped forward. Commander, I've completed my preliminary analysis of their communications technology. Their transmissions are almost laughable. They use electromagnetic waves to communicate, no faster than light speed. And their computers? Barely more advanced than the stone tools they once used. Zaller's sharp, reptilian eyes gleamed with excitement. So, this really is just a hunting trip. How quaint. What's their greatest achievement? Firing rocks at each other with explosions? He laughed again, the sound echoing through the command deck. It will be a massacre. Dr. Chaos looked up from his data pad, his expression a mixture of curiosity and disdain. Primitive, he muttered. Their military is nothing more than an illusion. There is no true defense. Zalor was about to speak when an unfamiliar sound broke through the silence, a beep, then another. It was the ship's communication system, but the transmission was unexpected, even more so because of its clarity. "Commander," Zara's voice broke through his thoughts, her hand hovering over her console, "incoming message from Earth." The words that followed froze the Zarian officers in place. The message wasn't a desperate plea. It wasn't a request for mercy. It was a response, casual and disinterested, as if the humans didn't care at all. The voice on the screen was undeniably human, calm, unaffected, and sarcastic. Well, the voice said with mild amusement. "Admiral Zelric of the Zarian Empire, right? Took you long enough to get here. We were starting to think you'd gotten lost." The shock was immediate. The aliens had expected fear. They had expected desperation. But this was something else. "Human," Zalor growled, his hand clenching at the console, "what do you think you're doing?" The human voice, completely relaxed, continued, "Oh, you know. Watching your fleet come in. Nice ships, by the way. Very imposing. We were expecting something louder. But you took your time. Not that we mind. It's been fun." The tone was off, not even a hint of panic. Zalor's eyes narrowed. They had miscalculated. The humans knew they were here. And they weren't afraid. The silence in the command deck was deafening. Commander Zalor stood frozen, his reptilian eyes locked on the communication screen, still reeling from the unexpected response from Earth. The human voice, casual and mocking, had shattered the quiet confidence that had filled the Zarian fleet moments before. "Admiral Zelric," the human voice continued with unnerving ease, "we were starting to think you'd gotten lost." The words hung in the air like a taunt, their tone far from the fear and desperation Zalor had anticipated. Zalor's claws dug into the edge of his command chair, his mind racing to understand what had just transpired. Earth's defenses were supposed to be primitive. Their technology barely more advanced than a child's toy. Yet here was a species, completely unafraid, mocking the might of the Zarian Empire. He forced himself to speak, his voice low and controlled, though the tension was clear. "Captain Zara," he barked, "scan the planet again. I want to know everything about their communications. Everything." Zara, ever the dutiful officer, moved swiftly to her console. "Already on it, Commander," she replied, her fingers flying over the interface. But even as she worked, the unease in her voice was impossible to hide. "The readings, they're normal, yet they don't match what we've seen before. They shouldn't have this kind of capability." Dr. Chaos, the fleet's chief scientist, stepped forward, his cold eyes scanning the data. "The human transmission is being broadcast on all frequencies. It's clear, precise. Their technology is evolving far faster than our intelligence reports suggested." A chill ran down Zalor's spine, though he refused to let it show. "Impossible," he muttered. "They've been using electromagnetic signals for communications for decades. They cannot possibly have advanced beyond that." But the evidence was mounting against him. Captain Zara spoke again, her voice tight. "Commander, their broadcast seems to have reached every corner of our fleet. They're using something we can't identify, something, well, advanced." Zalor clenched his fists. "This is a trick. It has to be. We know they lack the capacity to reach us with anything but radio waves. They're pulling us into some sort of illusion. They have no real power." He stood up, his voice rising in frustration. "Send the transmission back. Let them know what happens when an empire like ours is disrespected." Admiral Zelric placed a heavy hand on Zalor's shoulder, grounding him. "Commander, the humans might not be as weak as we thought. They're clearly aware of our presence, and their response, it's not like anything we've seen before. It might be worth rethinking our approach." Zalor paused, eyeing Zelric with a sudden coldness. The Admiral was right in one way. The human response had caught them off guard. However, Zalor's pride refused to entertain the notion that the humans were capable of something beyond their primitive understanding. "We are the conquerors here," Zalor growled. We destroy, we dominate. They will bend, or they will perish. Zara interrupted, her face pale as the data continued to flood in. Commander, it's not just the broadcast. We've been monitoring their entire communication network. It's different. They're operating something far beyond their earlier signals. Their systems, they've altered them. Our scans can barely keep up. Zalor stared at the glowing screen, refusing to let the fear creep into his mind. Are you suggesting that their primitive technology somehow matches ours? Zara hesitated, then nodded. In some ways, yes. But I can't explain how. We've seen their quantum communication systems, their energy sources, they don't fit our models. It's like their technology exists in parallel to ours but with none of the same limitations. Dr. Chaos turned toward Zalor, his expression haunted. What they've achieved with their primitive resources is remarkable. They've somehow circumvented the energy limits that should be inherent in their system. For the first time, Zalor felt his confidence waver. How did we miss this? I believe, Zara said softly, her voice carrying a weight of something far darker, that they've been watching us as much as we've been watching them. Everything we've seen, everything we thought we knew about them, could have been manipulated. Zalor's blood ran cold. Manipulated? What are you saying? Zara's eyes met his, steady. They've been hiding their true capabilities from us. They've been hiding everything. For a long moment, the command deck was engulfed in silence. The enormity of what was being suggested was too great to ignore. How could this be? How could such a supposedly backward species outmaneuver them so effortlessly? Zalor turned back to the screen, staring at the blue orb of Earth, once a symbol of weakness, now a mystery. Get me a direct line to the fleet. I want every ship to remain on high alert. We will not be caught off guard again. Zelric stepped closer. Commander, if they have already prepared for us in ways we can't yet understand, we may need to rethink our strategy. We may need to engage with caution. Zalor's lip curled into a grin. Caution is for the weak. The Zarian Empire has never feared caution. Prepare the fleet. We'll strike at dawn. If Earth has something to hide, we'll flush it out. But even as he spoke, a new feeling gnawed at him, a gnawing uncertainty that he refused to acknowledge. Something was wrong. The hunt had never felt this way before. And it wasn't just the humans. It was the fear that maybe, just maybe, the humans had been waiting for this moment. The Zarian fleet had moved into optimal attack formation, ready to unleash its devastating power upon Earth. Commander Zalor stood in the command center of the flagship, his hands clasped behind his back, eyes fixed on the screens displaying Earth in all its vulnerable beauty. The anticipation was electric. The moment of conquest had arrived. But despite the calm exterior, something within Zalor's mind gnawed at him, unsettling his focus. The earlier human response still echoed in his ears, that mocking tone, that complete disregard for the impending destruction. How could a species that barely knew how to communicate beyond radio waves be so unconcerned? Commander, Captain Zara's voice broke through his thoughts. She stood by the console, her fingers dancing across the controls, but her expression was tense. We've completed another scan of their surface. The energy readings, they're unusual. Zalor raised an eyebrow. Unusual? His tone was sharp. Explain. Zara hesitated for a moment before continuing. The energy signatures from Earth, they're well beyond anything we've encountered. In fact, they resemble our own quantum reactors, but they're different. It's not the same type of energy source. Our systems can't make sense of it. Zalor frowned. Primitive humans using quantum energy? Impossible. Dr. Chaos, the fleet's chief scientist, stepped forward, his voice laced with frustration. Commander, I'm reading similar patterns. The power signatures we've observed don't align with their known capabilities. They don't fit any of our models for primitive energy production. Zalor's thoughts raced. How could this be? He had monitored the humans for decades. Their so-called space stations were archaic. Their technological advancements seemed minimal at best. But now, here they were, revealing power sources they shouldn't possess. "Run the scans again," Zalor barked. "I want to know exactly what's going on." Zara's fingers flew over her console, her brow furrowed in concentration. "I've initiated a deeper scan, Commander. But this is something we've never seen before." Her voice trailed off as the results began to pour in. "There are massive energy sources beneath every major human city. These readings, they're almost like ours, almost, but not." "Not," Zalor repeated, his gaze narrowing. "How can they hide something of that scale?" Dr. Chaos stepped in, his expression serious. "It's not just their energy readings, Commander. Their communication network, it's evolved beyond what we believed. There's a secondary layer, something encrypted, running parallel to their electromagnetic signals. I can't crack it with our systems." Zara nodded. "We've been monitoring their surface for weeks, Commander. Nothing we've seen adds up. The humans' entire communications network is more advanced than we realized. This secondary layer, it's like they've been hiding everything in plain sight." Zalor's mind spun. For decades, the Zarian Empire had been the apex of technological evolution, and yet here were these so-called primitive humans, concealing vast power beneath the surface. How had they managed this? And for how long? A sense of urgency washed over him. "Activate the full-spectrum scan. I want everything, Dr. Chaos. If they've been hiding this from us, I want to know how." The scientist moved quickly, his hands shaking slightly as he adjusted the settings. The hum of the ship's engines deepened as the scan intensified. "It's not just energy signatures. It's their space stations, Commander. What we thought were basic orbital platforms are actually much more than they appear. They're using advanced stealth technologies we can't detect properly." The realization hit Zalor like a blow. Earth had been preparing. They had known the Zarian fleet was coming. They had anticipated this moment for longer than Zalor had even imagined. "How many stations?" Zalor demanded. Zara's voice was strained as she continued working the controls. "Hundreds. At least. All around Earth. And they weren't just constructed recently, they've been there for decades, hidden beneath layers of fake data. They're all connected in a defensive grid we missed entirely." Zalor felt a knot tighten in his stomach. He had been so sure of Earth's weakness, so confident in the Empire's superiority. But now, every assumption he had made crumbled in front of him. The humans had prepared for this day. "I want a direct connection with the fleet," Zalor commanded, his voice tight. "We need to know exactly what we're dealing with. I won't be caught off guard again." Zara's fingers flew over her console, but she paused, a new concern crossing her face. "Commander, there's one more thing. I've been monitoring their electromagnetic communications. They've been accessing our fleet's systems, silently. For months." Zalor froze. "What?" "They've been infiltrating us, Commander. Our entire fleet. I don't know how, but they've gained access to our systems. They've been gathering information. Reading our communications. Watching our every move." A chill swept through Zalor, his grip tightening on the console. "Are you telling me the humans have been inside our systems?" Zara nodded grimly. "Yes. For months, at least." Zalor turned sharply toward the viewport, staring out into the blackness of space. Earth, once a helpless target, now seemed like a fortress. And the Zarian Empire had walked right into a trap. "We've been blind," Zalor said quietly, the weight of his realization sinking in. "The humans aren't the prey. We are." Dr. Chaos stepped forward, his voice now edged with something close to awe. "They've been hiding their true capabilities. Manipulating us, watching us, and now they're prepared to turn the tables." Zalor's eyes burned with anger and fear. "Activate all weapons systems," he ordered. "We will not fall back. We strike at dawn." But even as he gave the order, a part of him knew, the battle was already lost. The humans had played their hand perfectly. And now, the Zarian Empire was the prey. The vast expanse of space stretched before the Zarian fleet, but Commander Zalar stood at the helm, his gaze fixed on the earth below. His sharp features were tight with tension. The fleet was in position, and the moment of reckoning had arrived. The humans had mocked them, but that would soon end. The Zarian Empire was here to take what was theirs. "Prepare the fleet for assault," Zalar commanded, his voice steady but filled with cold anticipation. The planets of the galaxy had fallen before him, and Earth would be no different. Behind him, Admiral Zelric and Captain Zara exchanged uneasy glances. "Commander, are we sure?" Zelric's voice was uncharacteristically cautious. "There's something off about this. These humans, they knew we were coming. Their communication systems, we're still not sure how they've been able to infiltrate our fleet." Zalar's nostrils flared in irritation. "They may have learned some tricks, but they are nothing compared to the power of the Zarian Empire. We've studied them. We've watched them for decades. Now, we will crush them." But even as Zalar spoke, the subtle uncertainty lingered in the air, felt by everyone on the command deck. The earlier scans, the hidden energy sources beneath Earth's cities, the unexpected sophistication of their communications, it was all a distraction, a trap. And Zalar, too proud to admit it, was walking straight into it. The silence was broken by the sharp beeping of the communication console. Zara looked up from her screen, her face paling as she processed the incoming transmission. "Commander," she said, her voice tight with confusion. "We're receiving a message from Earth." Zalar's jaw tightened. "Not now," he growled. "Prepare to launch the attack. This is just another attempt to waste our time. We'll destroy them before they can even speak." Zara hesitated, looking at the transmission in her hands. Something in her gut told her this wasn't ordinary. She initiated the message anyway, and the screen flickered to life. A human figure appeared on the screen, leaning casually against a console. The figure had short-cropped hair, a tired, yet confident expression, and a military uniform that was unassuming yet precise. The man took a long sip from a mug, his eyes meeting the Zarian commander's gaze with disarming ease. "Admiral Zelric, Commander Zalar, Captain Zara," the man said, his voice surprisingly calm. "Nice fleet you've got there. Very impressive. We were wondering when you'd show up." The tone was laid back, as if the human were casually discussing the weather. Zalar's chest tightened, and he felt the first stirring of genuine concern. "Human," he growled, "do you understand the situation you're in? You have one last chance to surrender. We have 2,000 warships, enough to turn your planet into ash." The human on screen raised an eyebrow, a smirk playing at the corners of his mouth. "Oh, I know. 2,000 ships. Quantum weapons. Planetary bombardment. Very impressive. Really, I'm shaking in my boots." He took another sip from his mug. "But here's the thing, if you think this is going to go down the way you've planned, you're sorely mistaken." Zalar felt his jaw clench, his anger boiling. "You will not mock us any longer." "We will." "Oh, I'm not mocking you," the human interrupted smoothly. "I'm just saying, we've had a lot of time to prepare." "Prepare?" "Yeah, that's the word." The human's casual tone only seemed to deepen Zalar's fury. Zalar's voice trembled with rage. "What is it that you're suggesting?" The human smiled, a cold glint in his eyes. "What I'm suggesting, Commander, is that you're already surrounded. And that you've been walking right into a trap for the last few hours." The words hit like a punch to the gut. Zalar's claws instinctively twitched, and he spun around to face Zara and Zelric, both of whom were staring at the screen in stunned silence. "What do you mean?" Zalar demanded, his voice shaky. The human on screen leaned forward slightly, his voice no longer casual. "I mean this, we've been watching you for months. Everything you've done. Every move you've made. Every fleet maneuver. Every single one of your battle plans. We've been inside your systems. You've been monitoring our communications, but we've been monitoring yours for years. Zalor's breath caught in his throat. What are you talking about? That's impossible. The human nodded. It seemed impossible to you, didn't it? You thought we were primitive. You thought you could come here, with your fancy ships and your overinflated egos, and just destroy us. But what you didn't count on was us knowing you were coming. What you didn't count on was us preparing for this day. Zara's voice was almost a whisper. It's true. They've infiltrated our entire fleet. Every communication. Every command. They knew our moves before we made them. Zalor turned back to the screen, eyes wide with disbelief. No. The human's smile widened. Oh yes. And now it's time to see how you handle being outplayed. Zalor looked at Zara, his mind reeling. They've been feeding us false data. All this time. The human spoke again, his voice steady. We've been infiltrating your systems since you first detected our planet. We've been inside your network, inside your fleets, feeding you the information you wanted to hear. And now, we've got full control of your weapons systems. You won't even be able to fire a shot without our permission. Zalor stood motionless, his heart pounding. What do you want from us? The human's eyes hardened. Surrender. It's your only option. You've been outmaneuvered. You've been watching us, but we've been watching you. And we've learned a thing or two. Before Zalor could respond, the screen flickered. A new message appeared in its place, incoming transmission, control override active. Zalor turned pale. What is this? The voice of the human returned, calm and victorious. Your ships are ours now. Every last one. We've been inside your systems for months. This is your final surrender. And now, we'll take your fleet and your empire, without firing a single shot. Zalor's knees buckled. Earth had turned the tables. They had never been the prey. The command deck was suffocatingly silent. Commander Zalor stood motionless, eyes locked on the viewport. Outside, the vast Zarian fleet hung in space, every ship in their arsenal now under human control. Every last weapon, every system, every strategy they had so meticulously crafted was no longer theirs. It felt like an unbearable weight pressing down on him. How had it all gone so wrong? Admiral Zelric was the first to speak, his voice hoarse and filled with disbelief. Commander, what do we do now? We've lost control of the fleet. The humans have taken everything. Zalor's fists clenched, but there was no use in trying to maintain composure anymore. His confidence, once unshakable, had crumbled like dust in the wind. He had underestimated the humans, but the reality of the situation was undeniable. Earth, once a weak and unsuspecting planet, had turned the tables. The Zarian Empire was no longer the predator, it was the prey. The screen flickered again, and this time it displayed a calm, familiar human face. Captain Jake Stone appeared once more, his expression relaxed, a slight smile playing on his lips. The smugness was unbearable, but Zalor couldn't deny the creeping sense of helplessness that gripped him. Commander Zalor, Jake Stone began, his voice smooth, almost conversational. I think it's time we had a proper chat, don't you? You've done a wonderful job of walking right into our trap. I trust you're beginning to understand the situation. Zalor's throat tightened. You've made your point, human. What do you want from us? Jake Stone's eyes gleamed. What do we want? Well, you have a choice, Commander. It's quite simple, really. You can either surrender or face complete annihilation. The words hit like a cold hammer. The human was offering them no mercy, but the real kicker was the calmness with which he spoke. There was no fear, no panic, just a quiet confidence. Jake leaned back in his chair, clearly enjoying the situation. You must understand, Stone continued, your fleet, your ships, your advanced technology, they're all in our hands now. And as for you, well, you're just another species that's outlived its usefulness. You had your time, but that's over. Zalor's mind raced. It was impossible to ignore the truth. They had been outmaneuvered at every step. But what the human was offering was not victory, it was a future of submission. The Zarian Empire, once the dominant force in the galaxy, was now at the mercy of this primitive species. But what choice did he have? Enough, Zalor muttered under his breath. I refuse to bow to you. Jake Stone raised an eyebrow. Refuse? You've already bowed, Commander. Your fleet is ours. We control your weapons systems. We've been inside your networks for months. This isn't a matter of choice. This is the reality you now face. Zalor turned away from the screen, pacing across the deck. His mind was a whirlwind, but it was becoming painfully clear, they had no way out. Their fleet was compromised. Their weapons were turned against them. Every contingency plan, every strategy, had been rendered useless by a species they had deemed inferior. Captain Zara stepped forward, her face pale. Commander. What if we do surrender? Zalor stopped mid-step, his chest tightening. What do you mean? Zara's voice was low, almost a whisper. We're beaten. I don't like it, but the reality is, we can't win. They've outsmarted us at every turn. If we don't surrender now, we risk our entire fleet and our people being wiped out. Zalor felt a surge of anger, but it was swallowed by the bitter realization that Zara was right. What choice did they have? They were trapped in their own hubris. Damn them, Zalor hissed, his claws digging into his palms. But we're finished. I'll offer them the surrender. He turned to face Zara, his expression dark. Prepare a transmission. It's time to end this. The transmission went live moments later. On the screen, Jake Stone appeared again, his expression one of mild curiosity. Well. I didn't think you'd be this quick to come around, Stone said, his voice light. What's your decision, Commander? Zalor's pride was nearly shattered, but he held his head high, despite the burning defeat in his chest. I surrender, he growled, every word laced with frustration. I surrender on behalf of the Zarian Empire. Stone nodded approvingly, his smile widening. Good choice, Commander. It'll make things easier for both of us. You'll find the terms of our agreement far more favorable than you'd think. Zalor clenched his teeth, but didn't respond. There was no victory in this moment, no sense of accomplishment. The Zarian Empire had fallen, and the humans stood victorious, not through brute force, but through intellect, strategy, and an unwavering confidence that Zalor now understood far too well. Jake Stone leaned forward, his voice serious. The terms are simple, you'll stand down. You'll leave all your territory intact and stop your expansion. In exchange, we'll allow you to keep your fleets, well, what's left of them. You'll return to your home systems and focus on rebuilding. We'll share technology that can help your people, but we'll also make sure your military capabilities are restricted. Zalor's heart sank. This was no peace, it was a restructure of the galactic balance of power, with Earth as the new force to be reckoned with. The age of conquest is over, Commander, Stone added, his voice final. Your empire will adapt, or it will be left behind. The massive Zarian fleet drifted motionless in space, the once proud warships now completely subdued, their weapons locked in place, and their systems controlled by human forces. Commander Zalor stood on the command deck of the flagship, his eyes blank, staring at the screen where Earth's blue sphere hung like a beacon of victory. The silence on the bridge was oppressive, the weight of surrender hanging heavy in the air. We have lost, Zalor muttered, his voice barely above a whisper. His claws gripped the edge of the command chair, but there was no strength left in his fingers. They had been outwitted. Outmoved. The Zarian Empire, the galaxy's apex predator, had become the prey. Behind him, Admiral Zelric shuffled toward the viewport, his expression grim. You were right about one thing, Commander, he said, his voice raw with disbelief. They weren't just hiding. They were waiting for us. We never stood a chance. Zalor didn't answer. Instead, he turned slowly, his eyes locking onto the human figure that appeared on the screen, a tall man with short cropped hair, a plain military uniform, and a relaxed demeanor that seemed out of place given the situation. Captain Jake Stone. the man responsible for the fall of the Zarian Empire. We'll get to the formalities in a moment, Stone's voice boomed through the speakers, calm as ever. But first, let me just say, Commander, I've been impressed. Not by the technology, honestly, we've seen that before, but by the sheer audacity it took to come all the way out here thinking you could conquer Earth. You were confident, I'll give you that. Zalor's jaw clenched. What do you want from us? His words came out sharp, but even his anger felt hollow. It had been drained from him with every passing minute since their surrender. Jake Stone smiled, though it wasn't an expression of cruelty. It was the smile of someone who knew they had won, someone who had played a game and outsmarted their opponent at every turn. What do we want? It's simple really. Your empire's expansion ends here, Commander. No more conquests, no more wars, no more subjugation. The Zarian Empire will become a partner in the galactic community, or it will fade into irrelevance. The choice is yours. Zalor's eyes narrowed. And Earth will rule? His voice was laced with bitterness. You think you can just take over the galaxy? Stone's eyes remained steady. No, Commander. We don't want to rule. We want to stop the cycle of conquest. There's enough room in the galaxy for peaceful development. But not for empires built on the backs of others. Your empire, your way of thinking, has come to an end. That's the first step in creating a better future for everyone. Zalor felt the anger flare again, but it was more than that. It was frustration, humiliation. How could Earth have known so much about them? About their strengths, their weaknesses? They had been preparing for this day, and they had played the Zarian Empire like a puppet. And now, Earth, a species once thought beneath their notice, was standing above them. What happens to us? Zalor asked, his voice quieter now, almost resigned. Don't worry, Stone said, his voice light but firm. You'll be treated fairly. Your fleet will remain intact. You'll return to your systems. But your military capabilities will be limited. You'll focus on rebuilding. We'll share some of our technology to help with that, but we're not here to make you stronger in ways that can threaten others. Zalor's mind raced. A peaceful galaxy? Was that really what Stone was offering? The thought seemed impossible. For centuries, the Zarian Empire had thrived on expansion. Conquest. Subjugation. And now, it was over. Why? Zalor blurted, the word escaping before he could stop it. Why help us? After all we've done, to you and to others? Stone's smile softened, but there was a steel in his gaze that was undeniable. Because we've learned from your empire's mistakes. We've seen what happens when one species thinks it has the right to conquer others. It leads to endless cycles of war and destruction. We want to change that. We don't want more victims, more empires that consume peaceful civilizations. Zalor stood silent, feeling the weight of the truth crash down on him. The humans weren't just offering peace, they were offering a chance to start over. To be part of something larger than just domination and war. But could the Zarian Empire truly change? Could they abandon their centuries-old ways? Jake Stone's voice broke through his thoughts. We don't expect you to change overnight. But this is the first step. Surrender isn't the end. It's the beginning of a new era, for you and for the galaxy. Zalor's mind swirled with conflicting emotions. He had been the proud leader of a galaxy-spanning empire, and now he was reduced to negotiating his survival. To a future where his people's empire would be a shadow of its former self. But don't think this means you're safe, Stone added, his tone darkening just slightly. We've been watching, Commander. We've been monitoring you for decades. If we see the Zarian Empire try to rebuild its military might or start any kind of aggression, we will be there. We won't let it happen. This is your chance to adapt, or face extinction. Zalor's throat tightened. It was no longer a question of whether the Zarian Empire could survive, it was whether it was even worth surviving in its current form. Peace was not in their blood, and yet, that was what the humans were offering. But it came with a price, a complete and total restructuring of the Zarian Empire's core beliefs. Stone leaned forward, his gaze locking with Zalor's. We're not asking for your empire to disappear. We're asking for it to evolve. To become something more than just an engine of conquest. To work together with the rest of the galaxy. Zalor took a long breath. The decision weighed heavily on him, but it was clear. The Zarian Empire could either adapt or it could die. And it wasn't just their future at stake. It was the future of the galaxy itself. We surrender, Zalor said finally, the words leaving his mouth with the weight of an entire civilization's fate. On one condition. Stone's eyebrows arched. And what's that? That we retain our honor, Zalor said firmly. We will never be a subjugated race. We will work with you, but not as slaves. Stone's smile returned, this time with respect. Deal. The Zarian Empire had surrendered, but in a way, they had also begun to evolve. The age of conquest was over. And the age of cooperation had begun. The Zarian fleet, once a mighty force of destruction, now drifted aimlessly in space, subdued and disarmed. Commander Zalor stood on the bridge of the flagship, his back straight, but his mind a battlefield of conflicting thoughts. The earlier transmission from Captain Jake Stone had sealed their fate. The Zarian Empire had surrendered, and the galaxy would never be the same again. Commander, Admiral Zelric said, his voice quieter than usual, it's over. We've lost. Earth's control over our fleet is absolute. Zalor turned to face him, his face a mask of stoic resignation. I know, he replied softly. But the war, it's not just over for us. It's over for the entire galaxy. Things are changing, Zelric. We have no choice but to adapt. Zelric clenched his fists. Adapt. Can we truly change after all these centuries? After everything we've done? Zalor stared at the viewscreen, Earth's serene blue surface reflecting back at him. We have to. There's no other option now. If we don't adapt, we'll be left behind. And extinction isn't an option, not for us. The quiet hum of the ship's systems was the only sound for a long moment as both men processed the gravity of their situation. Their once great empire had been forced to surrender, not because they had lost a battle, but because they had been outplayed, outthought, and completely blindsided by a species they had once deemed insignificant. Back on Earth, Captain Jake Stone stood in a secure command room, looking out the window at the blue planet below. It had been an exhausting week, but the results had been worth it. Earth had emerged victorious, not through force of arms, but through superior strategy and decades of careful preparation. His communications console beeped, pulling him from his thoughts. Yes, he answered, his voice calm. The face of Lieutenant Maya Cross appeared on the screen. Captain, we've received the final transmission from the Zarian fleet. They've agreed to the terms. Commander Zalor has officially surrendered on behalf of the entire Empire. Jake leaned back in his chair, a sigh of relief escaping his lips. It's done, then. It's done, Maya confirmed. The Zarian fleet is now fully under our control, and they're preparing to return to their home systems. We've already begun communicating with their high command about the next steps. The Zarian Empire will cease all expansion activities, as per the terms. Jake nodded, the weight of the moment settling over him. What about their military leaders? Zalor, Zelric, are they complying? They're not happy, but they're complying. Zalor's already agreed to begin rebuilding the Zarian Empire in cooperation with Earth. They'll focus on internal development, not conquest. Jake paused, his eyes narrowing in thought. This is only the beginning. The Zarian Empire is a force to be reckoned with. But we can't let them go back to their old ways. We need to keep an eye on them. Maya's face hardened. Of course, Captain. We'll monitor their every move. Jake leaned forward, his mind spinning with the long-term implications of their victory. It wasn't just about defeating the Zarian Empire. It was about reshaping the entire galaxy, ending centuries of bloodshed, and showing that cooperation, not conquest, was the future. Back on the Zarian flagship, Commander Zalor and Admiral Zelric sat in a tense silence, the weight of their empire's future pressing down on them. The fleet, once a symbol of their power, was now a pawn in a game they hadn't understood. The Zarian Empire, the galaxy's most formidable conqueror, was now a minor player in a much larger cosmic order. What happens now? Zelric asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Zalor looked out the viewport, his eyes scanning the stars, but they no longer held the promise of conquest. Instead, they were a vast, unknowable frontier that no longer seemed within their grasp. Now, we rebuild. We accept the terms laid out by the humans. We work with them, not against them. Zelric's expression darkened. How do we rebuild after everything we've done? After all the blood we've spilled? Zalor stood, his back to Zelric as he gazed at the endless stretch of space. We rebuild by accepting our place in this new order. We were predators, Zelric, but that time is over. It's not easy to admit, but Earth has shown us another way. A way where power isn't about domination, but about collaboration. Zelric sighed, his voice tinged with sorrow. Do you believe that? That we can really change? Zalor turned to face him, his eyes sharp. We have no choice. The humans have given us a chance, and we will take it. If we don't, we will die. Back on Earth, Jake Stone met with General Rex Vale in a private debriefing room. The weight of the recent victory hung in the air, but there was no time to rest. The future was wide open, and there was much work to be done. We did it, Jake, General Vale said, his grizzled features softening in a rare smile. The Zarian Empire is finished. We've secured Earth's place in the galaxy. Jake nodded, his face still serious. It's not over. This is just the beginning. We've made a powerful enemy and ally, but we have to make sure they don't fall back into their old habits. General Vale leaned back in his chair. It won't be easy. The Zarian Empire has a long history of conquest. It's ingrained in their culture. But if anyone can make them change, it's us. Jake met Vale's gaze. We need to stay vigilant. The galaxy is changing, and we can't afford to let our guard down. But if we work together, we can end this cycle of war. Once and for all.